Welcome to the Tuesday Call. I'm Jeffrey St Laurent, and those of you that are here live and those of you that were listening to this recording, always excited to deliver some great information. And my whole mission as what I do as a mentor coach to coaches is looking to help you transition from where you are to a full-time business. And really that's the objective here is starting to explore what that looks like and understanding the logistics along the way. I've been doing it full-time since 2004. So I've gone through a lot of different challenges along the way, and still challenges every day, and learning. And not too long ago, I realized that a lot of the stuff that I had been through has been quite valuable for people starting off, and to help lessen the learning curve, so to speak. And so it's become my passion to helping those coaches transition to full-time and really earning that full-time income. And a big piece of that is what I learned through selling and sales, and just self-taught through my mentors and observations, and realizing that that skill set, selling, marketing, has been really the number one factor that has allowed me the continued success in my business. And so I like to pass a lot of that on to the people, in my selling coaching group, in the blog that I have in my university, and on my website, and other products and services that I offer as well. So like this, even free stuff. So if you want to check this out, and I have other Tuesday Call recordings, this will be recorded. So I always post them in my university on my website. So my website is sellingcoaching.com. And if you go there, you can check out the university that has all the Tuesday recordings, and then also a lot of other short videos that will help you with this transition to full-time. Also on my website, if you notice, right at the very top of every page above the navigation bar, there's a link to my private Facebook group. If you haven't checked that out yet, we got a great group of coaches, and we do some great interaction there. We do some different challenges, so forth and so on. So if you haven't been a part of that, at least give yourself the opportunity to check that out. We get to interact a little bit more as well. And lastly, before I get into some good content, for those of you who are looking to transition, I do one-on-one mentoring, and I also just launched a great group mentoring program a few weeks ago called the JSL Mentoring Mastermind. And it's a group format. It's been fantastic for the people that have been in it so far. So if you want to learn more about that, and maybe you're not quite ready for that one-on-one, but you want to work in small groups, you have one-on-one access to me. I've got one-on-one mentoring hours each week. I got a couple times each week, and we also have a group call. So there's plenty of opportunities to interact. You can actually check out the pinned post in my Facebook group. And if you're not a member of my Facebook group for whatever reason, and you want to learn more about that, you can just send me a private email, jeff@sellingcoaching.com, and I can send you more information on that, and to see if you want to become a member of the JSL Mentoring Mastermind. With that being said, let's transition into let's talk about how much do we charge for our coaching. This has been a big topic in a lot of my mentoring calls, in my group mentoring calls as well. And a lot of people are always wondering, like, oh God, how much do I charge? And the majority of time, people are typically charging too little for what they're offering. There is such a thing as too much as well, but we want to kind of find that perfect blend. And a lot of this isn't just based on, I don't want to just base this on like, oh, well, we just want to earn more money. If we're going to transition to full-time, we have to realize, the realities of entrepreneurship. And the realities of entrepreneurship is, you're not going to be working a 40-hour week of paid clients. It's just an impossible factor. I actually do know a few coaches who have quite a few hours of coaching, but it's such a rigorous schedule. You have to have such a large database to continue to have one-on-one clients. Even up over 20 to 30 hours of clients, especially if it's on a one-on-one format, even in a group format, it's just a real challenge to maintain if you can even get to that level. I think the most clients I've had in a week is close to that 30 range, probably for a consecutive 3-5 weeks. And it was it was awesome, let me tell you. It was awesome, but it's exhausting. You're on the phone for 5-8 hours a day. I had, would go through a couple phones because the batteries were dying, you know what I mean? And it was awesome, but you tend to lose the individuality. You tend to lose, I'd be picking up the phone and I'm thinking, who the heck is this client? And that's not a good thing either. And honestly, I found the optimal range in terms of where we want to be for coaching sessions. If we're just talking, one-on-one coaching sessions for right now, on a weekly basis, is 10 to 12 sessions a week. And you might be thinking like, oh my God, 10 to 12, let's say hours basically a week of coaching. Like, well, I'd love to do more than that. And like I said, you can do more than that. But in order to, just really stay individualized, know who your clients are, not be overworked in terms of overscheduling things, I found over the years that 10 to 12 sessions a week is a really good optimal pace to be at. It's not too rigorous. It's not too little as well. And that's a maintainable piece, and that's an achievable piece. And in order to get, I'm going to give you some formulas here, right? In order to get and have 10 paying clients on a weekly basis, and these are just through statistics that I've seen in my business. So take that as a thought there, is that you're going to need 2.5 times the number of sessions you want in a week. And that's how many clients you'd need to have that many sessions. So in other words, if I want 10 sessions a week, I multiply that by 2.5, that'd be 25, right? So that's 25 clients, 25 active paying clients in order to get 10 sessions a week. And why that is because, most people start off on a weekly basis, but then over the course of time and as you work with them, assuming you can keep clients longer than their first round of sessions, which is an ideal thing. You can really service them, know where the value is, and you can work with clients over a longer period of time. And I would say from a session standpoint, about 18 to 25 sessions, which can span over the course of, let's say, 6 to 12 months. And that's really a great time frame to have for an average client. That's what I found. My average client I work with for about 20 sessions. And that's spread out typically over about 9 months, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter. And that's my average client there. I have anomalies where I've worked with people for really 2 or 3 years. I've done literally, I think the most person I've ever done session-wise, 137 sessions over the course of, I'd have to double check how many years. And then I've had people, 9 sessions, and that's my standard package. So trying to give you an idea of where the numbers come from. So like I said, you're going to need about 25 clients to get those 10 sessions. Because like I said, as you continue on with the relationship with people, people are going to go every other week. Maybe a person goes once a month. Some people cancel. They just have weird schedules, or maybe they need more time in between your sessions based on the amount of work that you're doing with them or what they've set out to do in between the calls. So that's just on average what I found. So in order to do that, you've got to have a pretty decent client base. So in order to, if you're thinking, oh, I want 20 sessions a week, 30 sessions a week, you got to do the math to figure out how many active clients you're going to get to have that. So also, 10 to 12 sessions a week is a lot more achievable number. And so now we got to look at, assuming right now, when most coaches start off, that's your only product that you're selling, right? And that's where I'd advise people to start is when you're starting your coaching business. Typically, the average person doesn't have anybody in their audience. They don't have anyone on their email database. If they do, it's not a relevant audience. It might be friends, family. When I say relevant audience, meaning assuming you've defined your message and who it's for. People call it a niche, if you will. I like to say that one message for that one audience. And you've defined, who am I helping and with what specific outcome? Like myself, I work with the coaches and help them. The specific outcome is transitioning to a full-time business. And even niching it down further, I message and I relate pretty much everything I talk about back to sales and marketing, so they can understand where the value comes from and how people buy, right? So once you've done that, assuming your database, you have an idea of who you're looking for. Most likely, if you're starting off, there's no real relevant contacts. That's what I mean by relevant contacts. If you're starting off and you've defined it really well, so it really makes no sense in designing any types of products, a book, an e-course, a group program, or whatever type of program you're offering, because at this point you probably don't understand your audience very well. You might think you do, even when I was started working and mentoring with coaches, I understood them to a certain degree, but the more and more I've worked with them and interacted with them, I really come to really understand much more specifically where they really need assistance with. And that's where I tend to drive my topics in my group mentoring calls, like in my mentoring mastermind, and even the calls that I do here as well. So that's where you're not going to be, typically I don't recommend creating other products. So the number one product you're going to be selling is your coaching. And so if that's your only source of income, meaning that's the only thing you're really selling in your business currently as you start off, and you're going to be doing 10 to 12 sessions a week, you've got to look at the math. So forget about, just pick any number. Okay, I'm going to charge $50 a session. I'm going to charge $200 a session. At that, you can just multiply it out and start to realize, some of your numbers for income. And where I'm going to go with this is I'd like to see you starting off at a minimum of about $125 a session, if we can break it down like that. So like $125 to $150 a session. So if I were to do the math and I pull a calculator out and let's just go on the low end, right? So $125, and I'm going to times that, let's just say let's just do our 10 sessions to make math easy, right? So that's $1,250 a week, right? So if we just times that by 4 weeks in a month, right? So now we're talking $5,000 a month, right? That could be a pretty decent salary. That's not like, oh my God, I'm gonna rock the bank on this one. But also for most people, it's a pretty decent salary where you can get by, you can have a decent mortgage and financial responsibilities on $5,000 a month. And so that's about 10 sessions a week at $125. And obviously we can go up from there, where if you do $200 a session times 10 sessions, that's $2,000 a week, and that's roughly a six-figure salary, right? So you can work the numbers that way, but what I'd recommend is starting off in that, like, say, $125 to $150 mark. And the reason for that especially is you have to realize that you're not working 100% of the time. So the time you're investing in your other activities, let's call them your marketing activities, your revenue producing activities, the activities that you're starting to do to attract your audience, to engage your audience, you don't get paid for those, right? But that's where all your results come from. So as you develop relationships with people over time, you start interacting with them. Those of you that follow me, you see me, if you're in my private Facebook group, you see the interaction I do there when we do things like creating videos with our visibility challenge. All the videos in there, I'm commenting on there, every single video, I'm interacting with people. I do these Tuesday calls. You see the emails that I put out as well, so if you follow that. So there's a lot of activities that I'm doing behind the scenes, creating Facebook ads, following up with leads there, getting them engaged in my group and on my email list. So there's a lot of activities outside of this that I'm not getting paid for, like when I do those. But as a result of doing those, I'm developing relationships with people, and I'm finding out where the timing is, where the need is, and obviously in the timing for those needs. And then when that's appropriate and we have a relationship, I can, hey, would you consider working with me? Is now the right time for something like that? Is that something you would consider, or you'd be open to talking a little bit more about? And you nurture these relationships over time. So you have to realize that even though you're maybe doing 10 hours or 12 hours of paid coaching in a given week, there's the other, I'll just leave it blank, X amount of hours, at least, maybe 15, 20 hours worth of interacting and networking, events that you're doing, and most of the time that stuff is not paid for, it's free. You can get up to be doing paid speaking engagements, things like that, but initially you're going to be starting off and you're speaking for free, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic. Put me in front of an audience, I'll gladly speak for free, because I know on the back end I can create relationships and I can turn that into clients, whether it's immediately or down the road with those relationships. So the reality, these are just some of the realities of our business. And so, if I'm looking and I'm working with you and I'm mentoring with you, I'm going to have you take a look at, your income and your expenses and what are the minimums in terms of income you need on a monthly basis. And, we've got to be setting our coaching rates according to that. Not just like, oh, this is what I need to survive. But typically, that's where that pricing structure comes from that $125 to $150 mark per session, is typically that can get you to enough income, obviously depending on where you're coming from. I mean, if you're coming from a world where you're earning a six or multi-six-figure salary in your job, coming into this, of course you can certainly do that. But obviously, if you need, it depends what you need on a monthly basis. And typically, for the average person, that range right there is going to be enough for them to come pretty close to either quitting their job or maybe going part-time. And part-time, honestly, you can do a full-time coaching business if you're working a part-time job. Because initially, it's like there's only so much you can do in your business. You can't force people to join your audience. You can't move people along at a quicker rate. You can only do it so much and so quickly. You can get in front of more and more people, but then it's keeping them engaged. So there's only so many hours you can do in your business. So if you can be creating a decent, have a good client base right now, let's say 3 to 5 sessions a week or 5 to 7 sessions a week, and then you have a part-time job, you might be able to, get that transition as well. So it's looking into the flexibility of your current job in terms of time, in terms of hours that you put in, and how much you're earning in benefits, so you can figure out where that transition comes from. But typically, that's a great range to start off from, and I'd recommend you starting off there. A lot of coaches, they're scared. They're like, oh my God, I can't charge, even $75 a session, or oh my God, $100 a session. And a couple of things to help with that is, first, I was always scared to charge more as well. I was in the same shoes until I ended up paying more for a coach myself. So a lot of coaches that are going through school, the coaches, the peer coaches, et cetera, that they're working with, it's included in their tuition, right? And so they're paying for it through the tuitions, but when you're working with them, it doesn't feel like you're paying for it. It doesn't like, oh, here's my credit card and I just bought a $2,000 coaching package, even though they technically did, but it has a different feel for it, right? So there's not a certain dollar value that they've placed on, let's say, working with this coach. It's like, oh, I've got to work with this coach as a result of going through the school. So what I found is and what I recommend is as a coach is find a mentor. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a mentor coach as a thing to say, well, hire me. What I am saying is that find, whether by myself or somebody else, especially if it's around business, I wouldn't recommend finding a business coach. I would rather have you find a business mentor. You want someone who's doing something that you want to do, someone who can help you out with specifics. There's a lot of business coaches out there who maybe they had this one-time thing where it's like, oh, I did $20,000 at this one group program I did, and all of a sudden they're this magnificent success. But really, I read their bios and it's like, oh, last year you did this one thing, and all of a sudden it's like you're this rock star business person. And it's like, that's not how it all That's not how it all works. Anyone can have a big day, but can you do this consistently over time? And that's the real piece you want to be looking for. And the whole point of me saying this is find someone. If it's a business, find a business mentor, someone like myself. If it's if you're looking for, maybe you can't get into business because your world is just not good right now. I'll say it like that. Maybe you do need more of a life coach to help sort things out a little bit. So you can be ready for your business and you can show up consistently day after day. But what I'm saying is hire a coach, and you've got to, I'm not just saying find an expensive coach, but until you've hired someone for, $150 a session, $200 a session, $500 a session. The most I've paid for a mentoring session was $2,500 for 3 hours face-to-face with a mentor. His name's Ryan Lee. Awesome, well worth it. But what we're talking about here is until I did that, until I worked with my first mentor at $200 a session, then I started working with someone else for $500 a session. It wasn't because, I was making great money and I could afford it. You know what I mean? It was, no, I believed in the value of this, and I realized in order for me to afford something like this, I've got to work with this person because I've got to understand how to get to that place where I could afford something like this. And so my point being is when you hire someone at a much higher coaching rate, that especially if you can't afford it, but you find a way, and you start to really get value from that. Like when I invested, I remember I first started investing $200 a session, and this was back in 2004, 2005, and it was just like, man, I was strapped for cash, and I was putting it on credit cards, but I was getting such huge value from what I was learning from my mentor. That's when I was able to raise my coaching rates, because I paid the money out and I saw the value of coaching. I saw the value of mentoring at a higher level. And most coaches have never spent that much or invested that much in themselves and received value from it. So that as much as they believe in coaching, they don't really have this intrinsic value from experience, because they've invested it and they've gotten the value out of something that oh my God, I would never spend that much on coaching, right? Until you think like, if you're listening to this call right now and say, okay, would you invest $200 in a session, $500 in a session? And if you're thinking, oh my God, there's no way I would ever do that. But then all of a sudden you find yourself doing that with somebody and you're getting huge value from it, that's when you get the experience from it. So again, I'm not saying just, go find a really expensive business mentor or coach. But until you do that and you get the value from it, now you're going to understand how people could invest in something or someone like yourself and spend more money than maybe you think they would or you think you would in somebody. And we're talking $125 to $150, all right? And that's a great way to start to overcome those barriers. And also, as you start working with these people, all you need is the first person to buy. Once that first person buys and you've gone over that barrier, so to speak, of like, okay, someone bought, all right? It's easy after that, or it's much easier, should I say that, because now you understand that, wow, someone has hired me, someone has said yes to this. People can't afford these fees. You have to realize nowadays, everyone's in different financial brackets and different financial spaces in their lives. But the reality of life is, like I always like to say, I said years ago with my brother, I'm like, geez, when you own a home, it's like just everything costs $500. It's like something goes wrong, $500. Now it's like anything goes wrong, it's like $1,000. But that's the reality of it. Is like things are expensive, and the more financial responsibilities you have, the more you realize that. And what people are paying now for different services, personal training, massages, any variation of spa treatments and things like that, women to get their hair done, coloring and highlights and all that good stuff. We're talking services that are all within the $100 to $200 mark per service, whether it's based on an hour or for a particular service. And so you have to realize, this type of industry of what we're doing with coaching, it's a premium service. It takes a lot of skill set and a lot of practice and a lot of education. And we are running a business. You have to remember, we're running and operating a business. So charging fees in that $125 to $150 area starting off, it is very reasonable. Like honestly, it's very reasonable. If you start charging too little, I'm talking, I would say 75 or less, 50 to 75, even under $100. You're starting to charge too little for your service, and you're starting to devalue what you do. And also the reality of buying, if I'm talking about selling in buying terms, the difference between, let's just even go $75 a session and $125 a session, right? That's $50 a session. And you might think, oh my God, $50 a session, that's so much. But in reality, in the terms of a buyer, right, that $50, right, over the course of a 9-session package turns out to be $450. The difference in that price point isn't going to be the factor of why they don't buy you. All right, and this comes from experience. It's, if you're shopping for something and you see the value of it, and there's a difference of let's say $450. I mean, it sounds like, oh my God, $450. But in the end, if you're doing something and you really see the value in it, $450 isn't going to be the deciding factor of whether you're going to buy this or not. If you really want it and you see value in it, you're going to find a way to get that piece, that $450 more, so to speak. So the price point between, let's say, $75 a session and $125 a session isn't going to be the reason they're saying no. You can have this identical situation, and the person, on a complimentary call, and at the end they want to hire you, and you say, okay, it's let's just call it $800 versus $1,250. that price point is not the deciding factor of whether they're going to hire you or not. And right now, if you're thinking like, well, yeah, that's a big difference, it might be a consideration for them, but the difference is when they want it and they see value in it, they're going to find a way. So that's not the differentiating factor. And that's one thing that's the thing I want to impress upon you is, changing those fees from, where you're thinking. Even if you're toggling with a number in your head, pick the higher number. That's not going to be the difference. And ideally, let's get you up over that $100 mark towards that 125 at least. But again, it's for the reasons I gave you. It's so vital for our business in order for us to survive and more importantly, create that transition also with the value we're putting into our business and the value we can give with our coaching. Couple things to consider as well is when you're going through your business, there's a lot of things. No, let me rephrase that. There's not a lot of things, but there's let's say a small handful of things that we need to buy for our business. And typically they're subscription services. It's a payment gateway, meaning so we can accept credit cards. It's having some type of a mailing system like an Aweber or a MailChimp type of thing, so we can a place for have our database. It's web hosting, right? It's maybe actually paying someone to do our website so we can get some materials done there. I mean, those are honestly the basics. You might do like a lead pages if you're doing some landing pages, etc. And then other miscellaneous costs to get maybe some materials done, a logo done, etc. And then any things with phone, if you do like on my group calls, my mentoring mastermind, I use a program called Zoom. So we do video conferencing for our group calls. So there's a subscription for that. So there's some small subscription things that range from anywhere from, let's say, $10, $15 a month to $20, $30 a month. So we're not talking huge dollars per month here, but for under like $200 a month, you're using these services. So first off, number one is don't try and cheap out and like, oh, I'm gonna try this free version of this for a little while, and then I'm gonna try and just do blind carbon copy emails on Gmail for a while, or it's like just invest in what you need. And yeah, there's monthly costs to it, but don't try and cheap your way through things and make things harder for yourself than they need to be. Get the programs and software that you need. Yes, there are some monthly costs to them, but if you're going to be running a business, these are some of the costs to your business. And they're so low in terms of overhead. It might seem like a lot for a lot of people, but don't go invest in like a coaching school and spend 10 grand on a coaching school and say, hey, I want to open this coaching business. But then you're kind of toggling over this service for let's say a payment gateway, and it's $15 or $30 a month, and you're like, well, I'm going to use a free PayPal version, when the paid version of being able to take credit cards over the phone and do recurring payments is going to be so much more beneficial for you. So this leads into our pricing, meaning that, run a business, start to run a business from day one and understand what those things are. That's why I tell people about my mentoring mastermind with my group program. I'm like, get in the group program and get these questions answered instead of trying to piece all this free stuff together and confuse yourself more on where to go. Now what you can do is you can get the answers, you can get the stuff you need. And what that does is on the consumer end is it creates more of a unified brand, a unified experience when someone goes through your experience, an easy customer experience. And nowadays, especially when people are paying for stuff, you got to make it easy for them. How easy is it for you to buy a song nowadays? It's like, I hear a song on the radio and I love it, and I'm at a stoplight, I go to iTunes and I type in a few letters of the song and it populates, and I hit buy, and I sometimes don't even type in my password, and then within 10 seconds, I'm listening to the song and I own it, right? It's so easy. I don't have to wait for someone to send, iTunes to send me an invoice via email, and I gotta check it, and then I don't have my credit card in front of me, and then I gotta do it later. I gotta log in and I gotta type all this information out. That's ridiculous, right? So we've got to, on our end, we've got to make it a seamless, easy customer experience for these people to buy. And all these things go into the perception of your success and what you can do for the customer, and also with what you charge. And customer experience is very, very important. Also, when it comes to your branding and your marketing materials, I did a call. Check out on on my Tuesday calls on my website under the university. I did a call on how to launch your business with no website. Like in order to get a decent website, done the right way, that's customized, etc. You're talking, depending on who you talk to, $2,000 to $3,000. You can get you should be able to get a very decent website. I know my website, sellingcoaching.com, I did that for $3,000, and I put a few $100 into it here or there just for some minor changes. But that's, that's like full blown, but some people might not have that right away. So you can start off with like a Facebook platform, etc. It's done and it's free and it's very professional. You can have lead capture on it, and you can start off that way to start building an audience, right? So those are some ways you can get around, investing $2,000 or $3,000 in a website. But even from that standpoint, whatever you're doing, make sure your images and if you're using a logo or your colors, they're as professional as possible. Like even if you're just starting with a Facebook page and a Facebook group, make their header professional. Go to Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com, and have someone who does social media headers. Get a nice image done of yourself. Get a good photo done of yourself. It doesn't have to be professionally done, but just an iPhone 6 or so, a newer phone in good daylight, shoots a nice HD photo, and get it professionally done, and it's with all the dimensions properly, so it fits perfectly and it looks professional. Any of your materials out there, like if you're doing a free offer, like when I'm working with my one-on-one mentoring clients, you're doing a free offer for some lead capture, for people to opt in, for instance, to your list. Take some time, take $100, take $50, go to Fiverr, get a local graphic designer to make it look really nice. So when someone downloads it, it opens it up, opens a PDF up. It's not like you just did it in your spare time on Microsoft Word and turned it into a PDF. It's like there's some nice graphics. It's your brand colors. It's nice looking. It's pretty. You want to represent your brand as professional as possible from day one. And if you notice, even some of these costs I'm throwing out at you, these aren't, I'm not dumping thousands of dollars of costs on you. We're talking a few $100 here and there, $50 here, $75 here and there. It can add up, but what's it adding really up to over time? It's not a lot. And so taking the time to do that and presenting yourself professionally, that also has a lot of impact on consumer perception of success, consumer perception of also rates as well. From experiencing my website, from experiencing my videos, things like that, I want someone to come to me through the way I speak, the way I carry myself, the way they see my materials, the way they interact. I want to have such an experience that they would expect my rates to be $200 mark or maybe even more than that. So it's not like, oh my God, it's a big surprise. It's like, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He's successful at what he does, and he commands a rate for that. And that's the perception I want people to have. People's perception, a consumer's perception is very, very important, and you can control consumer perception by the quality of the work that you do. And nowadays, thankfully, with, like, I'll just mention Fiverr again and things like that, is we can get things done very professionally at a very affordable rate. Even if for your financial situation, it might be a little stretch for you, but it's like, you know what? Take out a $5,000 loan, right? A line of equity or some friggin', even if you have to use a credit card, and don't be quoting me on this, be like, oh, Jeff told me to take, $5,000 on my credit card. I'm just saying, worst case, it's like, that's more than enough for you to get, a killer website done, great materials, all the subscription services you need, and to have them paid for many years down the road. And you're set up and you're ready to go. But again, you got to be ready for that, and you got to know where you're at. But again, the reason I talk about that stuff is because it leads to consumer perception, and consumer perception leads to the rates that you charge and how they perceive when they interact with you as well. And a lot of those pieces are very vital, important pieces to what we charge and how much we charge for our coaching packages. And that's why I felt it was important to go into those pieces and also give you a little bit of background about how consumers buy and what their perception is. And you know it yourself as well. When you walk into a bookstore, when you see advertisements on TV, when you visit different websites, you can tell the ones that are professional, you can tell the ones that are homemade, so to speak. You can tell the ones that, the attention to detail. There's pieces missing there. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect. There's always glitches somewhere, or there's something a little bit off. But the point is that overall, everywhere they go, things work, things are easy. And you have to remember that, like I said about buying the iTunes song, things need to work, things need to be easy for consumers. If they click on a video and it's waiting and it's waiting and it's waiting to download, it's like you got about 2 or 3 seconds before they just kind of delete it or click or they move on. And obviously you can't control all that because some of it has to do with bandwidth and download speed, etc. But everything that you do, in that respect matters in terms of consumer experience as well.